What is up, Mizzou fans? Welcome back to another video here on my channel. My name is Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, covering your Missouri Tigers, and I invite you all to join me as I address the state of the program. All that and more right after this. Ladies and gentlemen, Missouri Tigers fans, welcome back in to another Mizzou football related video here on the Show Me Football YouTube show. Before we dive into things, I do kindly ask you all to please like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. Make sure you go ahead and hit that notification bell as well for future Mizzou content. I do want to apologize for the lack of Mizzou content on this channel lately. If you guys hadn't noticed, I was on a little bit of a hiatus there for a minute. I went on leave. If you guys don't know, I'm in the military, so I took some leave over the Veterans Day weekend holiday. I put the microphone down for a little bit, didn't really talk Mizzou, and then Braden and I were on different schedules, so we didn't do any pre-games or post-games for most of the recent games. We haven't really talked since Bo Pribula went down in that Vanderbilt game and Matt Zollers took over as the Tigers starting quarterback. But I want to start there because I'm just going to pick up where I left off. And in this video, I'm going to be addressing, like I said, the state of the program. We're going to talk about the Oklahoma loss. We're going to talk about where things stand with Eli Drinkwitz, because that's the big conversation still right now. But picking up where we left off, Bo Pribula gets hurt. Matt Zollers, the true freshman, steps in for him, and he gets his first career start versus Texas A&M. And as soon as we knew that was the case, I just kind of thought to myself, like, you're playing with house money. You're not expected to beat Texas A&M. I think the goal with Matt Zollers in at quarterback was to go 2-2 in that last 4-game stretch. Well, then Bo Pribula miraculously recovered from his dislocated ankle, and he's back in the starting lineup, played against Oklahoma, which is fine, I suppose. I mean, I guess he gives you the best chance to win that type of game. And because here's the thing with Matt Zollers, I think he showed some good things in the time that he played, but you can tell that he still is not ready. He is a true freshman. You weren't beating Texas A&M with him. That's fine. Texas A&M's just a better team. That was going to be the result probably 9 times out of 10. Mississippi State, that was a good bounce back for this team. It was good to see them not roll over after everything that they were playing for the season kind of finally went up in flames. I mean, you weren't making the playoff after you lost that game. That was your last mulligan. But they went out there, they played hard against Mississippi State. Matt Zollers, again, showed some good things, I thought. The free play to Alugbide, that throw when Mississippi State jumped off sides, like, that's the connection that I hope we see for a long time in future years, future seasons for the Missouri Tigers. I think that connection could be special. But then you saw Ahmad Hardy go off for over 300 yards, nearly breaking the Mizzou single game rushing record previously held by Devin West. Although, I mean, he still holds it. Ahmad Hardy did not break it, but he came really close. I wanted to see him break it. He didn't, but that was a good win for sure. They put up 49 points versus a Mississippi State team that has taken a lot of good SEC teams to the brink this year. So do not discount that win. Yeah, Mississippi State's not very good, but they don't suck either. So that win is worth something to me. And then you get to the Oklahoma game where they lost this past weekend, 14-6. Or was it 17-6, something like that? I mean, it doesn't really matter. That game, I think what's most frustrating about it is you did not lose because you didn't have the talent. You didn't lose because of who was starting at quarterback. I think that's the game that you put mostly on the coaching staff. You mostly put on Eli Drinkwitz, Kirby Moore, Eric Link. The cowardice that Drinkwitz showed in that game, like, that's one of the, and I know a lot of people have not been fond of Eli Drinkwitz's in-game coaching for the longest time, and I get it. I do think he's improved a lot over the years, though, more than people are really willing to give him credit for. He has improved a lot, but the Oklahoma game was certainly a step back for Eli Drinkwitz. When he first got here, we were sold this guy that's a riverboat gambler that has a creative vision for the offensive side of the football. And in his first season, he did show a lot of those things. He's pulling out flea flickers, all sorts of trick plays. He wasn't afraid to go the unconventional route. But ever since then, it seems like he's gone into a shell. And this Oklahoma game was one of the worst examples of Eli Drinkwitz in big games. That's the thing that people are hanging over his head, is another top 10 team that you went up against and you couldn't pull it out, even though you were in the game. I mean, Drinkwitz's records his record, against top 10 teams, it just is not very good. And you can't shy away from it. And me, as a big Eli Drinkwitz fan, as a big Eli Drinkwitz defender, yeah, it's kind of hard to defend him against some of the big game stuff. At some point, you have to win one of these games before we just look at you as the James Franklin of the SEC. I mean, right now, that's kind of what Eli Drinkwitz looks like. And there's not too much pushback from me against people calling him that. Here's the thing. Eli Drinkwitz, he did not give his team the best chance to win against Oklahoma. And there were several points in this game where Mizzou could have done something to make it a game, to get back in the game, to maybe even take a lead on Oklahoma, and he blew it at every single opportunity. I mean, you look at the fourth down, they were going to go for it in the first half. And that, to me, this is where the game changed. When Drinkwitz was deciding to go for it, I was all for that. I said, hey, you're in their own territory or their territory. You don't know how many of these chances you're going to get in this game. You need to take advantage. A field goal is not going to work now, especially with your kicking situation. Like with your kicking situation, knowing how inconsistent Robbie Meyer is, that you just should have gone for it. And he was going to. And then the other team calls timeout. Oklahoma calls timeout. Brent Venables calls timeout. They come out of the timeout, and Drinkwitz now decides, you know what? We're just going to kick it. Why? Why would you go into a shell after the other team called timeout? Like, that's cowardly, Drink. That's cowardly. And it reminds me of watching Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs, because it feels like there's so many times where that happened. And Andy Reid was going to go for it, and then the other team calls timeout, and he's like, we'll just kick it instead. And then as a fan, something bad is going to happen after you change up your call. And that's exactly what happened. Field goal gets blocked. 2 plays later, Oklahoma scores, a 70-yard touchdown. And at that point, you just knew Mizzou's not going to score enough points in this game to win. And there is one thing I want to say about that big play, that big touchdown given up by the Mizzou defense. It is extremely hard to put blame on the defense for that game. For really this stretch in the season, it's hard to put any blame on the defense. They've given the offense a chance in every single game, no doubt about it. But if there's one gripe that I have, is it feels like in every single game this year, Corey Batoon's unit has given up at least one huge 50, 60, 70-yard play to the other team, and you just can't have it when you know how inept this offense is. And I know it's unfair to ask the defense to be perfect, and I'm not necessarily asking them to be perfect. Like, yes, they are going to give up some points, but you cannot give up the back-breaking 70-yard touchdown. It just cannot happen. So that's one gripe I do have with the defense. Otherwise, the defense was great, though. I mean, they shut down Oklahoma's offense. The defensive line had John Mateer in hell. I mean, he did not look very good at all in that game. And of course, people are going to give him a ton of credit, even though he didn't play that well. Mizzou's defense stepped up. Darius Smith, Zion Young, Damon Wilson, those guys were all over the place. The secondary played really well. Toriano Pride is having a hell of a second half of this season. Like, I'm really proud of him and what he's been able to do after he looked really rough in the first half of the season. But offensively, yeah, the coaches failed this team. And you look as well, Eric Link's unit. There was an unblocked defender on the edge that just was able to walk across the line of scrimmage and block the kick. And that was the second time in that game where no one was even in his way. And he was very close to blocking the first field goal attempt from Mizzou, which was a knuckleball which should have, I mean, that first knuckleball, that Robbie Meyer kick that just barely made it through on Mizzou's opening drive, like right there, they should have just like decided we're going to go for it this entire game because he just could not be trusted. And then notice later in the game when Mizzou kicked another field goal, they had Oliver Robbins kick it from like 40 yards out, and it looked beautiful. And it's like, you're telling me we've had Robbie Meyer out there pissing down his leg this entire time when Oliver Robbins was on this team and can apparently do that from 40 yards out? I mean, what's going on, Eric Link? What's going on with your unit? That is, we'll get to that. We will get to that. And then Kirby Moore, I just thought didn't even give this offense a chance. We knew that Bo Pribula had a turnover issue before the injury, comes back from injury. You knew he was going to be rusty. You knew that if Mizzou was going to win this game, they had to get the run game going. And Ahmad Hardy looked good the first couple of drives. But then once Oklahoma caught on to what Mizzou was doing, and once they realized that Mizzou was not going to be able to throw the football in this game, they were able to shut down the run because Mizzou couldn't do anything else. They didn't threaten the Oklahoma defense in any other way. But, you know, there were points in this game where Kirby Moore just refused to even attempt to throw the ball. And I get it. You're calling plays as if you know your quarterback is incapable, but you at least have to attempt to throw the ball to keep the defense honest. And Kirby Moore didn't do that in this game. So he just didn't give his offense a chance, didn't utilize the middle of the field at all. And this is 2 years now going on where Kirby Moore just has not used the middle of the field with this offense, with the receivers over the middle. And then, of course, Mizzou, they had a chance to come up and get one last gasp at the end, and they go for it on 4th down. And I agreed with the call. I know some people were mad saying that if you only needed 2 yards, then you save that play for after you get the 2 yards and get a first down. The play where Kevin Coleman pass hits him in both the hands, he drops it, would have been a touchdown. I actually like the play call. I like the aggression there. Kevin Coleman just has to make that play. Of course, he drops it, and that's where you knew for sure the game was over. But the real story is that Mizzou's offense just wasn't good enough to win. They were never going to score enough points to beat Oklahoma. You cannot ask the defense to be perfect. That's what Mizzou was asking their defense to do. And I thought the coaches just completely did not give this team a chance either. And that's my feelings on the Oklahoma game. That's what's so frustrating about the Oklahoma loss is it's not even like, I mean, Oklahoma did not out talent this team, but the coaches were out coached, and it just felt like they botched this opportunity for this team. Because if you had beaten Oklahoma, that would have been a top 10 win for Drink. It would have been a huge confidence boost for this team. And although you're still not going to the playoff in all likelihood, I know there was like a 10% chance with some chaos that Mizzou could have gotten into the playoff with a win over Oklahoma, but realistically not making the playoff, right? But then it would have kept double-digit wins still on the table, and that has never been done at Mizzou, is double-digit wins 3 seasons in a row. Now, that being said, I will be really curious to see how this team responds going into Arkansas, because they could easily say, you know what, our season's done. Our coach is leaving, maybe. That's definitely a distraction, though, and trust me, we're going to get to that. I'll be very interested to see how they respond, but it would be nice to see them beat Arkansas. I know that game means a lot to Drinkwitz being an Arkansas native, so I do think he'll have the guys ready to play. You know, say what you want about Drinkwitz as a coach, and there's a lot you can say about him, but his teams do not really give up on him. I mean, they always play hard for him. I expect that against Arkansas. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Arkansas can score the ball, and Mizzou cannot, even though Mizzou has an elite defense. Like, you got to be able to put some points on the board. So we'll see. Drinkwitz typically does not lose to teams that he should not lose to. You cannot point to a single game that Drinkwitz has lost and been like, oh man, he should not have lost to that team. So I feel good about Mizzou in that game. We'll see though, but I definitely would like to see them win. I know it's not a huge difference as far as which bowl game you get, but it would keep 9 wins on the table. And even though it's not double-digit wins with a bowl win, 10 wins in 2023, 10 wins in 2024, 9 wins in 2025. That would be up there with the best 3-year stretch in Missouri program history. And I would like to see Drinkwitz continue with that momentum. And if that's a down year, if 9 wins is a down year, we're in a really good spot as a program still. Now, the main topic of conversation, though, is not what happens here in the Arkansas game or what's gone on in these past couple games. It's whether or not Eli Drinkwitz is going to be the head coach of this program going forward. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to give you guys all my thoughts right after this message from our partners on this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have not heard of W Energy, then you are absolutely missing out right now, as W Energy has taken the energy drink market by storm with their new unique flavors and jitterless energy blend. W Energy is a powered energy drink that replaces other inferior caffeine beverages. It contains 0 harmful chemicals, 0 fillers, 0 artificial colors or dyes, and no proprietary blends. The star of the show is their coffee fruit extract, which helps you focus without the jitter or crash of other energy drinks out in the market. If you're like me, I've relied on caffeine to get me going about my day in the past, but thanks to W Energy, I now have a new, healthier alternative. And not only that, but it tastes absolutely amazing. They just sent me their new Japanese yuzu flavor, and it's got that sweet citrus fruit taste. It's one of the better tasting energy drinks I've ever had. W Energy is what's been keeping me powered lately, especially throughout this rough stretch for the Kansas City Chiefs. But best of all, guys, you can get an additional 10% off your W order using my promo code down in the description. Go ahead, click that link, go get your W order, and then put in the promo code SHOWMEFB for an additional 10% off. W is absolutely amazing. I love what they've been sending me so far. And best of all, guys, you can go and take advantage of that discount. So go get your W. Go check them out. They're going to be partnered with me all football season long. Ditch the caffeine. Go W. So there you guys have it. Definitely go ahead and take advantage of that sale going on right now, utilizing the link down in the description. So like I said before the ad break, Eli Drinkwitz and the coaching carousel is the biggest story surrounding this program right now, not what has gone on this season. And it's really unfortunate because Drinkwitz at this point has had a chance to shut down the rumors if he thought it was a distraction to his team. And I do think it has been a little bit of a distraction to this team. It's hard not to think about. If you're a player, it's hard not to think about, is my coach going to be here going forward? We do not know that yet at this point. And there's been a lot of coaches around the country whose names have been in these searches or thrown around in these coaching searches and these rumors that have said they're staying or they've signed extensions. We have not gotten that from Drinkwitz. And until we get that, the suspense is going to continue. And at this point, it feels like the wind has blown each direction at this point. He's staying, he's going. There was a lot of smoke around Penn State a couple weeks ago. That seems to have died down a little bit. The video I made a few weeks ago addressing the coaching search with Eli Drinkwitz, or the coaching searches, where his name has been brought up. I said, I just don't see him leaving really for any of those places. I think he's comfortable at Missouri. He realizes he has a good situation. That's not really something he's eager to leave. I did say in that video, though, if he was offered the LSU job, I think he probably would take that. And that's one of the jobs that if he did take it, I don't think a single Mizzou fan would blame him. But at this point, and this is where the conversation gets interesting, is, could a program like LSU, if they don't hire, Lane Kiffin, although it does sound like Lane Kiffin is heading there, which is probably the biggest story in college football right now. Can you sell hiring 7-5, 8-4 Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri to the LSU fan base? I don't know. I don't know about that, man. The big threat, though, seemed to be Penn State. Like I said, that was where most of the smoke was. But now it seems like interim head coach Terry Smith maybe is making a run at that job. And it seems like, again, things have cooled down with Eli Drinkwitz. So that kind of raises the question, if he's not the guy at LSU, if they're going to go with Lane Kiffin, which it sounds like is going to happen. And I'm going to be really fascinated to see what happens after the Egg Bowl. If Lane Kiffin does ultimately end up leaving Ole Miss to be LSU's head coach and he leaves a playoff team, that will be a national story. We'll see what happens. But, drink off the table at LSU, drink off the table at Penn State. Florida, I don't know. I don't see them hiring Drinkwitz. I don't think that one's going to happen. Auburn, I mean, I understand the connection. He was on staff there with Gus Malzahn, and I just don't really see him leaving for that type of job. I think Missouri is probably a better situation than Auburn. So at that point, if you're Eli Drinkwitz, like, where are you going? And we have to consider that he has to actually get offered the job. Is Drinkwitz the number one on any of these lists, or will they get down to Drinkwitz on their list and actually give him an offer and say, we want you to be our head coach, take it or leave it? At this point, I don't believe that's happening. And I believe that will probably be the biggest reason that Eli Drinkwitz ends up staying at Missouri. But if I had to put money down on an outcome, a result after the Arkansas game, it's that Eli Drinkwitz is going to remain Missouri's head coach. He will sign an extension probably a couple days after that Arkansas game. But, he probably is going to look around. And he kind of has been looking around. He's been lifting his skirt up a little bit. He's been flirting with these other schools. And I think it's a little bit beyond the point of just leveraging his situation at Mizzou, because if that was the case, he probably would have already signed an extension still. Like, he's done the whole song and dance of saying, well, he hasn't said anything publicly, but like saying, I'm interested in Penn State, or, oh, I'm listening to LSU. You could say that was a leverage play a couple weeks ago. Not anymore. That seems like a little bit more of a serious determination from Eli Drinkwitz to get one of these other top jobs. And that's just what these coaches do, man. I mean, that people are going to say, if Drinkwitz wants to leave, let him leave. I don't necessarily agree with that. I still think the best course of action, the best possible result for the Missouri Tigers football program this offseason is to hang on to Eli Drinkwitz, because it is just very hard to start over. And I think Drinkwitz has built a really good culture here. I do think he recruits very well. I know there's going to be arguments about the big game coaching stuff, and you guys are ready to move on from Eli Drinkwitz, I'm sure, but we cannot just erase what he's done over the past 2.5 years. One bad stretch should not be having everybody ready to run him out of town. He's gotten Missouri to a point as a program where they, quite frankly, have never been before. I mean, you can make the argument for Gary Pinkel because he had this program on the doorstep of a national championship game multiple times. But as far as being ready for sustained success, being a recruiting power, being in that upper echelon of SEC programs, Eli Drinkwitz has this thing going as strong as anyone could have imagined. So I still think Eli Drinkwitz staying should be what Mizzou fans are cheering for, rooting for. Yes, he has some shortcomings, and some of the results have not been what people's expectations were for this team, especially this season. And I get it, but I do think he deserves the chance to shake up his staff in the offseason. And that's something that I expect to happen if he does come back as the head coach. And I do think that if he comes back as the head coach, there will be increased commitment. You heard him talk about that. The broadcast mentioned it during the Mississippi State game. There was more chatter about it during the Oklahoma game from the broadcast, where Drinkwitz was talking about getting more investment from those Fortune 500 companies. And now that's something that a lot of people are talking about. And I do think Drinkwitz is already getting some investment from those Fortune 500 companies. He does talk a little bit like he's getting none of it, but again, this is all for leverage, right? Like, Drinkwitz wants Mizzou to keep pumping resources into his program. And guys, that's what any coach is going to do. That's what any agent is going to try to get for their client, is a better job or a better situation at Mizzou, where Drinkwitz is already at, by getting him more resources, getting more NIL commitment. So I do think that Drinkwitz will end up staying. I think that's looking more likely than not at this point. There did seem to be a little bit of a scare, but in my honest opinion, I think Drink is staying. I think that's what Mizzou fans should want. I still think, he's bought himself some time. He deserves to see this thing through here at the University of Missouri. I would hate to see him leave, because I think he's really made this program relevant. You love him if he's your coach. You hate him if he's not. And I think that's exactly the type of personality Mizzou needs as their head coach. Now, at the same time, if I'm wrong and Eli Drinkwitz does end up leaving, Mizzou has to look for a head coach. Hey, no hard feelings. I'm fine with it. I'll appreciate Eli and everything he's done here, and I'll be excited about a coaching search because I do believe Mizzou can go out and find an even better coach than Eli Drinkwitz because this is a better job than when he found it. So either way, I'm chilling. I'm at peace, with whatever happens, but I do hope Drink stays. I do think he'll stay. I'm leaning that way. So those are my thoughts on the state of the program right now, where everything stands with this season, with the coaching carousel. Definitely let me know down in the comments below what your guys' thoughts are. If you expect Eli Drinkwitz to stay, if you want him to stay, and what are your thoughts on the season now that Missouri is not going to make the playoff and they're fighting for the Relia Quest Bowl or the Mayo Bowl? Let me know your thoughts heading into the Arkansas game. I'll probably have another video this week talking about that. So stay tuned. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Mizzou fans can find this. Follow the Twitter at ShowMeFB. Check out ShowMeFootball.com for more. That's all I got for this one. I'll see you all in the next one. And as always, MIZ.